Welcome to Scott Fox After 9. Today's episode is going to be very Ontario-centric, just so you know. I know there's people listening in almost every province across Canada, and some of those provinces do not like to hear too much about Ontario. Understood, I get it, but in this particular case, there's a lot of stuff that I got to cover here because Ontario Premier Doug Ford is currently presiding over a government that hasn't sat in a while and won't be sitting for a while. So all we've got is when the Premier comes out and does a news conference, and there's a lot of different things on the go. In addition to threats to the economy and things like that, there's also a healthcare crisis. There is a housing crisis. There's an affordability crisis. There is so many different things going on, and we're going to go through some of those in this episode of the pod. I also want to let you know toward the end of this episode, I'm going to cover something that many people messaged me about yesterday. Chrystia Freeland, our former deputy prime minister, former cabinet minister, who is now working for a foreign government and currently sitting as a member of parliament in Canada. I can't imagine anything more inappropriate than that. If not, maybe even illegal, to be honest with you guys. So we're going to get to that coming up, and you're going to hear from Prime Minister Mark Carney talking about the situation that Chrystia Freeland has found herself in. So lots of reasons to stick around on this episode. I hope you enjoy it. Right now, here is Ontario Premier Doug Ford.
I had an opportunity to think over the holiday season, and I'm thinking, where were we last year compared to this year? Last year, we had President Trump just got elected, getting sworn in, put a full attack on our country, on our province, and we had no federal government. So compared to now, we had uncertainty, and we were out there saying, oh, Canada's great, and this is the reason you should make a trade deal, and we didn't know the rules. Well, we learned the rules with President Trump. There are no rules with President Trump. So as we move forward throughout the year, and as we move forward for this year, we're going to focus on what we can do to continue to thrive and prosper, how we can work collaboratively with all the provincial governments and the federal government as well. So I'm feeling, do you know what it is? I'm feeling very positive. And I was getting, when I say thousands of messages over the holiday season. And every time I returned a message, I'm feeling positive. And don't get me wrong. Are we going to have a little turbulence? Are we going to hit certain walls?
All right, I'm going to pause Premier Ford right there because, yes, we certainly are going to hit a few bumps over the next little while. But let's take up what he just said. And by the way, one of the reasons that I love doing this podcast every day is because I can give you more than you're getting from the mainstream media. Doug Ford spoke yesterday for about 25 minutes, and there was 2 clips that ended up on the news, and both of them were about 15 seconds long. That's no way to try and capture what the premier of the biggest province in the country said. So in a podcast form, especially this one, I can give you longer clips and you can hear in their own words what our politicians are saying. Doug Ford there saying that a lot has changed over the last year, and part of the reason that we started off slow in responding to America's threat of tariffs is because we didn't understand the rules. And he's saying we didn't understand the rules because there are no rules with Donald Trump. I just want to correct the premier and point out here, the rules are well established. He wants to get rid of supply management. He wants to get rid of a few policies that the Canadian government has that attack American tech giants. He wants a deal that works for America and also works for Canada. For Doug Ford to say there are no rules is completely ridiculous because the president has been very emphatic about what he wants to see done in order to get a deal. It's actually us that has stalled the deal, not the least of which is Doug Ford himself, who put out that anti-tariff ad featuring Ronald Reagan that has had talks on hold for now months. So for the premier to say that, I think it's a little dishonest, but I'm going to be offering my commentary throughout the premier's remarks here, including when we get to the Q&A. That is coming up. Here is more of Premier Ford.
Working with other parties, the federal Liberals too, and we just start moving. And I can feel it. I can really feel it out there that we're going to have a very positive 2026. But that's without saying that there's going to be bumps, but we're going to get through them. We have an important mandate, and that mandate is to protect the people of Ontario from the uncertainty, as I said, in the upheaval that President Trump caused. But we're going to focus on what we can do, and we're doing it. Collectively, by the way. When I say we, I'm talking all Ontarians, not the government, but everyone putting the rubber to the road. We're delivering on that mandate that we got elected by building the most competitive, resilient, and self-reliant economy in the entire G7. And last year alone, despite ongoing economic uncertainty, Ontario welcomed nearly $28 billion of investments. I'm going to repeat that, $28 billion of investments, creating nearly 57,000 new jobs. And again, that's all the companies out there, everyone working together. My number one salesperson, Vic Fideli, he's all over the world. And when I talked to him over the holiday, I talk to him every day, but he said, Premier, we have just endless amounts of companies that are going to be investing anywhere from tens of millions to hundreds to billions of dollars. So that's good news.
Where? Very, very simple question. Where? The premier comes out and does these news conferences, and it's frustrating to me that he only does the news conferences as opposed to doing a sit-down one-on-one interview. I would very much like to follow up on some of these points that the premier very casually throws out there as if they're fact, because I would like to fact-check them. Apparently, there is how many billions of dollars of new investment, and he said over 50,000 new jobs? My simple question is where? Where are these companies that hired over 50,000 new people? Because nearest I can tell from going through some of the reports that have come down from StatsCan related to employment is that we created a lot of part-time seasonal jobs. I don't see a lot of evidence that we're creating jobs that are leading to good, well-paying, fulfilling careers. In fact, it seems like we're losing most of those jobs. And it also seems like the bump in the road that the premier talked about is partially going to come from government. There's going to be a lot of people that lose their job in the month of January, February, and March. Everyone knows and understands that. It's going to seem on paper like a massive job loss when StatsCan puts out the next round of job numbers because all of those part-time seasonal jobs are going to end for the season. So then again, let me ask, where are the 50,000 plus new jobs, and who are these companies that say they're going to be spending tens of millions and billions of dollars in Ontario? Where are they, and why would they do that? What did we promise them? Or have we done anything to create the climate where businesses would want to invest? Because it seems to me that if companies have a choice, if they set up in America, no tariffs, they get cheaper labor, they get cheaper real estate, they get a whole bunch of different incentives. Here, we have much higher taxes. Yes, taxes and real estate are much more expensive in Ontario than in various parts of America. I'm wondering why companies are coming here. What specifically is it that the premier has done that's created those conditions? Because frankly, right now, it just seems like a pie in the sky number. I don't understand where these jobs are coming from, who they went to, who these companies are that are investing. I'd like to understand a little bit more. Maybe the Premier's office could put out some examples of who these companies are, because I really would like to know more. I'm not saying he's lying, but I've seen no evidence of any of the things that Premier Ford is talking about here. Let's hear him continue.
In fact, we've cut taxes and will continue to do so. We're investing billions in skills training, and we've already trained more than 750,000 workers. Think of that. In every single sector you can think of, 750,000 people now have been trained. Over 100,000 of those people have found employment, which is great, and help them take home a bigger paycheck at the end of the day.
Hold on a second. I want to hear that number again, because again, the premier just casually throws out these numbers and then he moves on. And there doesn't seem to be any follow-up because the media doesn't get to ask a whole lot of questions of the premier. It's usually one question and a follow-up. A lot of the details tend to just get thrown out in these news conferences without any real follow-up. So I want to be clear once again, what exactly did Premier Ford just say about our economy?
More than 750,000 workers. Think of that. In every single sector you can think of, 750,000 people now have been trained. Over 100,000 of those people have found employment, which is great.
Okay, hold on. So we trained 750,000 people. I don't know who got that training, but there was a large period last year where I was unemployed when I lost my radio job. Nobody ever offered me any skills training for future employment. That was never even offered to me. 750,000, almost a million, in a province of 16 million. So roughly 1 in 16 people got retrained. To do what? Where did this retraining happen? Where did we train 750,000 people? I'd like to know that. I'd also like to know, is that a good number? We retrained 750,000. Only 100,000 of them have been able to find a job. That means 650,000 of these people that we retrained still can't find a job. Are these numbers adding up? Because I'm just quoting what the premier said. Does that make sense to you? Let's hear more of what Doug had to say.
We're fighting to defend every job with financial supports to retool, reshore, and retrain, and to pivot to new products, new markets, and new customers. At the same time, we're creating new job opportunities for workers by investing in and supporting growth-ready sectors. I'll give you examples, like the critical minerals, nuclear, life sciences, and defense. Later this year, we will have shovels in the ground building the roads to the Ring of Fire, 3 years ahead of schedule. Thanks to the arrangements we signed with First Nations. They were historic. I just want to thank the Martin Falls, Webequie, and Arrowland.
Yeah, we know. Okay, so listen, the premier is suggesting that there are brighter lights on the horizon here. He's suggesting that things will get good, but he's mentioned twice in this news conference there's going to be some bumps in the road, and he's absolutely right. The CUSMA renegotiation, there's no reason to think that that's going to go well, particularly now that the U.S. has access to Venezuelan oil. So I don't know how this is going to go. When Donald Trump says we don't need anything that Canada has, he might actually be right now. Now that he's got the oil thing secured up, I don't know that he really needs much from us. And that doesn't give us any leverage when we're negotiating. We know a lot of people are going to lose their jobs. We know some people are going to lose their homes. Interest rates are still very, very high. The cost of living is still really, really high. It is almost out of control. And when Doug says we're going to hit some bumps in the road, I think he's really understating how bad it's going to be. And he must know. Surely the government has sent out some projections to our leaders to let them know what they foresee really happening in the economy. And don't expect Doug to come out and predict a whole bunch of job losses and companies closing and things like that. But he knows it's going to happen. I know it's going to happen. You probably know it's going to happen. It's on the way. I feel like it's kind of dishonest to just glance over that and say it's a little bump in the road, but things will get good. We talk about building that road to the Ring of Fire. Absolutely, it needs to be done, but I think Canadians just want a straight answer. Tell us the day we will be driving minerals that we have extracted from the Ring of Fire down to southern Ontario and shipping them out to the rest of the world. What date? Just a date, please. Will it be in 2026? No. Will it be in 2030? No. Will it be in 2035? Maybe. That's a hard maybe. More likely this will be closer to 2040 when that's done. Unfortunately, the urgency is right now. And I'm not sure that this government understands that. I'm going to circle back on that point in a little bit when I talk about some of the road projects that the province wants to build. But let's hear more from Premier Ford. This is an opportunity in a podcast like this for you to hear in his own words or their own words what our politicians are saying with full clips and context.
Is there enough office space for the Ontario public sector workers you're mandating back on the job?
Yeah, we're working on that, Richard, and I appreciate the comments there, but it's great to get everyone back to work like every other normal citizen. You know, you go out there and you show up 5 days a week, and there's arrangements. If they can't make it in, they're going to have to work within the bureaucracy, the OPS. They all have their managers, and we just look forward to getting everyone back. And by the way, it's not even back to work because they always work. They're good people, the OPS. They're just going to work within office and within the office. But anyways, I just want to thank all the OPS. And by the way, folks, there was a whole bunch of Ontario Public Service that were working 5 days a week nonstop because they couldn't leave the office. But that's up to their management to work that out. But I'm very, very happy. I want to thank Ottawa too, the mayor out there. He's doing a great job. Mayor Sutcliffe. Everyone's coming back to the office, not back to work because they always work.
Okay, that's Premier Ford commenting on yesterday where Ontario civil servants, the Ontario Public Service, OPS, the ones who were working from home or remotely or hybridly have to be back in the office 5 days a week. Now, I personally disagree with that. I think anybody who can work from home should be allowed to work from home. But I also understand that every company is free to make that choice on their own. And a lot of companies have decided, for many reasons, no, the hybrid thing isn't working or the work from home isn't working, so everybody's got to come back to the office. In the government's case, it was a hard turn. Some of these people moved hours away from where their workplace was because they thought they would be allowed to work from home or work remotely permanently. That's not the case. Were they promised that they could do that? Did they know that for sure when they bought that place? Not likely, because I don't know anybody that would have made that promise that you will forever be working remotely or working from home. So there's people out there who are feeling like they got burned. Here's the thing. If you don't like it, and this is the same option that those of us in the private sector have, if you don't like what your work is trying to do, if they want you to return to the office and you just don't want to do it, you can quit. You can leave that job and go get a different job. That's what someone in the private sector would do if they are just determined that they do not want to return to the office. You can quit. Now, the downside here is there's not a lot of jobs out there. It is very, very difficult to get a job in many, many, many cases because there's so many people fighting for very precious jobs that are available. So what do you do in that case? Well, you've just got to suck it up and go back to work. I was amazed yesterday when I was watching the news. And I do watch it every day, even though I think it is just filled with propaganda and nonsense. But I do watch it, and I watch it through a critical lens. And one of the things that was very obvious to me was how much the union was stretching. I saw the union and workers yesterday trying to tell every reporter who would listen, it is so crowded. There's no space for everybody. How dare they send everybody back to work when there's no office space for them? Well, where did the office space go? It's not like you've been working from home or working remotely for 50 years. It's been 5, max. Maybe you got sent home during the pandemic. Maybe you got hired since then. Working from home and working remotely isn't some long-standing tradition that the government is turning its back on. This is something that was done temporarily because of the pandemic, and a lot of companies, and the government included, flirted with the possibility of maybe this could be a thing. Maybe this could be a long-term solution, and if it works out, we can minimize our real estate footprint, et cetera, et cetera. There was a lot of reasons that some people thought this is the way of the future. Well, the government changed its mind, and it's allowed to do that, just like any other employer. Did we sell off office space? Because I'm not aware of that happening. I don't remember seeing anything about that in any government publication, that we were selling off office space. Did we hire some epic number of people? Why is there a shortage of space now? Because nothing changed. If you had an office downtown Toronto before, that office is almost certainly still there. So when the union comes on TV and says, oh, this is crazy, it's so chaotic, there's people on top of people, they're sharing desks. Why? At one point, we had a desk for everybody. There was an office space for everybody. What changed in these last few years? Again, we didn't lose any real estate that I'm aware of. We didn't hire a huge number of new people. So what changed? Or is it possible nothing changed? This is really just obstruction. This is really just another objection that the media is amplifying to try and undermine the province. Again, I sympathize with you. If you were working from home and thought you had a great deal doing that, working for the public service, and you can work from your living room, and then they said, you got to come back to the office. I feel bad for you, but it's their right to do that. I went through the same thing. I didn't really want to go back to work either, but if work says you got to go back, you got to go back. And that's just all there is to it. Here is more of Premier Ford and the Q&A with reporters.
Yeah, sure.
Part ways with Steve Clark and Khalid Rashid until after the Integrity Commissioner's report on the Greenbelt back in 2023. You waited to see what the Integrity Commissioner reported back, you looked at that report, and in the weeks ahead, you made some action. We now have the Integrity Commissioner looking at Skills Development Fund, specifically at some of David Piccini's actions. Are you waiting to see what that report says before your next steps on dealing with your labor minister?
Well, thanks, Robert. Let's see what the Integrity Commissioner says. I'll stand by that program all day long. There were 750,000 people trained, 100,000 people finding new jobs. We're going to continue doing this. Is there tweaks to every program? 100%. Do we follow the direction of the Auditor General or the Integrity Commissioner? If they come out with recommendations, 100%. Are we cooperating? 100%. But it's a great program, and we're going to continue moving forward with it. But with any program that large, there's going to be tweaks, and that's what we're going to do. And do I have confidence in David Piccini? Yes, I do.
So you have confidence in him now, but pending what that report says. Is that what
No, I never said that, Robert. I have confidence in him now, and we're cooperating with the Integrity Commissioner. So it's a great program. We're going to continue moving it forward because we got to look at people's lives, and if they have a trade, they have a job for life. And you can't ask for anything more than that. And we're going to continue training people for the jobs of the future as well. It's so critical that we focus on the jobs of the future, no matter if it's nuclear or if it's life sciences or healthcare and critical minerals. So that's what I'd be focused on if I were a young person coming out of university and college. I wouldn't recommend taking the basket weaving course that some young people do. Don't do it. Take something that, jobs of the future.
Okay, Premier Ford trying to tell young people what they should and shouldn't be doing to find a job. My advice would be to move out of Ontario. And I'm only saying that because that's what my kids did, and that was how they got a job, is when they left here. I really don't understand why the Premier is still digging in on this skills and training development program. It seems like the thing is just riddled with scandal. The Integrity Commissioner is investigating. There may be more investigations on top of that. I don't know. Either way, we do have to wait and see what the Integrity Commissioner finds out. But if the Integrity Commissioner finds that money was misappropriated or there was corruption in any way, not only do some people need to be fired, charges need to be laid. The Canadian public has had enough of seeing their tax dollars get wasted. And for the Premier to continuously double down on this program is great. This program is the best. We need this program. Kids, you should be going into this program. Forget your basket weaving. I really don't know how he could walk that back if the Integrity Commissioner finds out that something nefarious happened here. I'd also like to understand how it works, because when I was growing up, and tell me if something has changed. When I was growing up, I would make a determination about what I want to be when I grow up. And if I decided, you know what, I want to be a doctor, well, I would go to university and I would get an undergrad. Then I would apply to medical school and I would carry on the steps until I became a doctor. Now, the Premier is suggesting the future is in the trades, and I have no reason to disagree with him. Everyone I know that is in the trades seems to enjoy that and seems to be fairly well off. So that's good. Great. Are we paying for people to get their trade certification? Is that how this works? And if we are, okay, but are people who want to be doctors having to fund that themselves? I'm trying to understand what we're paying to train people for, who makes that determination, how much they get, and what the ROI is for us, the taxpayers. I want to understand that, and if somebody at Queen's Park can answer that simple question for me, I'd love to hear an answer. It just seems like we're picking winners and losers, and if you don't go into the field that Doug Ford wants you to be in, then you're kind of on your own. But if you want to go into a field that he likes or he approves of, then we've got all kinds of skills and development training money for you. Is that how it works? Do the employers get some of this? I don't understand it. I really don't. And I've tried to. I don't understand where this money is going, and that's very, very frustrating for me. Again, if somebody at Queen's Park wants to clarify, I would love to hear. This is more of Ontario Premier Doug Ford.
Premier, Ontario Court has ruled that you do, in fact, have to hand over your personal cell phone records as it pertains to government business to the Information and Privacy Commissioner. Are you going to do that, or is your government going to?
Yeah, we're gonna appeal, folks. I get thousands, and I'm talking to the people that call me, and there's thousands, not hundreds, thousands. Do you want your personal records about your health care and your family and everything else going public? There has to be confidentiality. And it's no different than when you leave office as a city councillor, if you leave office as an MPP, as an MP, do you know what you do? You destroy all records. That's what we have to do. So anyways, I can assure you we're going to keep your calls to me highly confidential. I've never ever mentioned a call in 7.5 years. I've never mentioned anyone's name because I get very personal calls about family situations, very deep too, and they trust me. And so I'm not going to break their trust. I'm going to make sure they're confidential. And we're going to have an appeal.
So are you saying you destroyed records, or you're?
No, I didn't say destroyed. When you leave office, right? If you're a city councillor and say you retire, or MPP, you retire or you lose, or an MP, by law, you have to destroy all records in your office. So say someone else, you retire and the same party gets elected and goes into your office, you can't hand over those confidential records to your colleague that just got elected. You have to destroy them. So I don't see the difference. Calls are confidential.
Fair enough. This is the Information and Privacy Commissioner, and you are the Premier of Ontario. You do use your personal cell phone for calls that relate to government business. Nobody's asking you to reveal confidential calls that you're having with constituents, but certainly ones that you might be having that have influence on government business. Shouldn't those records be released to the public so we know who's influencing you?
No one influences Doug Ford, I can assure you that. What is right for the people, that's my decision. That's what I'm going to focus on. And I would say that 90 some odd percent, I don't know exactly, are all personal. People have issues. I'll give you an example. I get a phone call this morning, a message, from a great educator, a great teacher I've never met before, saying the heating's out in their school. Like, you're calling the Premier of the day to say your classroom's cold. But these are the things that I deal with, and I thank them, because that's a serious concern to that teacher, and I want to thank that teacher for calling me. But I get endless calls. Guys, when I say endless, they don't stop all night. I don't know, people are up all night calling me, and usually when they call me at 2, 3 in the morning, they either had one too many pops, or something's going on. And so I call back this one person at about 7 o'clock in the morning. I see that they called at 3 o'clock in the morning. And I said, were you drinking, or were you, smoking the wacky tobacco? Like, you don't call your mother at 3 o'clock in the morning. And next thing you know, that person's online saying, he told me I was on drugs and I was drinking. No. He didn't say that I called at 3 o'clock in the morning. But folks, like, you can wait till 7 to give me a call, but I get it around the clock, 24/7, Christmas Eve, Christmas Day, all the time, and I don't mind. That's a job I signed up for. And as all you tell me and my staff, look in the mirror and blame the person in the mirror for giving out your cell phone for the entire world. So it's my fault.
Okay, well, he's got away with words, doesn't he? Premier Doug Ford there is involved in yet another scandal, and I'll tell you what this one is. This one is involving cell phone records. You see, the Premier has his work phone, and he's got his personal phone. And when he got elected, and his brother did the same thing, gave out his cell phone number. I'm here to represent you. If you need something, you can call me directly. I will take care of whatever need that you as a taxpayer have. I think that that's amazing, and I know that Doug Ford does answer that phone, and I think it's a great service that he offers. Sorry to hear that people are phoning him at 3 o'clock in the morning, but I imagine he probably gets a lot of weird calls and probably just as many bad ones as good. That's fine. Is the Premier? Well, number one, he is talking about destroying records when he gets out of office, and I don't know that that's such a good idea. I'm not sure that he fully understands what that rule is. And no, you don't arbitrarily, the day you lose an election or step down, just go on a burning spree, burning all your files. That is not how this goes on here. There's a lot more to it than what the Premier just suggested. I'm going to recommend to him, this is free legal advice. I wouldn't destroy anything until it's cleared, until you're good to destroy it. That's that. When it comes to his phone records, well, the Premier, if he did everything on his work phone, which is what most premiers would do. If you were going to give out a phone number, you should give out your work phone number because you're working when you do that. But he gave out his personal cell phone number and everybody's got it. It's online. You can Google it if you want to phone Doug Ford. Here's the thing. Sometimes some of the people that may want to do business with the government of Ontario or may want to lobby the Premier of Ontario, sometimes they don't phone the work phone. Now, the records on the work phone, those can be scrutinized. But Doug doesn't want to turn over the records on his personal cell phone, even though he admits he gets calls from constituents all the time. Is it even possible that maybe one or two of those calls were not from some teacher who doesn't have a furnace working in their school? That maybe they were from a developer who wants a certain piece of land freed up or rezoned. Maybe that call is from a foreign leader who wants to talk about a particular policy initiative. Access to our senior ranking leaders should be cataloged. President Trump there, he takes a lot of heat. In fact, Doug will crap on Donald Trump anytime he wants. Every time he gets an opportunity, he does it. Donald Trump's records are kept for all perpetuity. All presidents are. Why don't we have that for our politicians? We've got a real problem in this country with foreign interference, with lobbying and things like that. Foreign agents that are trying to infiltrate our government. Doesn't it make sense that the Premier of Ontario, if he's going to use his personal phone for business things, should also make those calls available? What Colin DeMello there, what's up, Colin? He's a regular listener of After 9, so thank you, Colin. That was a great question. I'm glad that you stayed on the Premier for that. Listen, nobody's asking the Premier to disclose what he talks to residents about, but it's only fair that if somebody calls him, that he give out the information that he can give out. Hey, you don't have to tell us which constituent called and what issue they're having in what emergency room. But if you get a call from a construction company that wants to get the contract to build the tunnel under the 401 and it happens to come in on your personal cell phone, that's still very much work business and the people have a right to know that. It should be subject to freedom of information requests. I don't understand what the Premier doesn't understand here, although it just plain seems like he doesn't want to give up anything. No compromise here. Nobody's entitled to what goes on my personal cell phone. Then he's got to stop using his personal cell phone for business. This is a very common thing that happens in the business world all the time. There's a different level of accountability, though, when it happens in the private sector versus when it happens in the public sector. Doug Ford is the Premier of Ontario. The courts have now ruled he must turn over those phone records. And he's still saying, I don't want to do it. I'm going to appeal. I admire him if it truly is about the confidentiality of his constituents. But Doug, I can assure you, you don't have to violate their confidentiality in any way. You just need to be transparent about who you're talking to and what you're talking to them about if you want to take that call on your personal cell phone. Here's more of Premier Ford. I think I'm going to do maybe 2 more clips, and then I'm going to switch to the Prime Minister, who is over in Paris.
Is closing next month. In fact, the company's listed for sale. Are you going to follow through on your threat to remove Crown Royal?
Oh, 100%. I can't wait.
You will?
Yeah, 100%. But I'm not going to waste another bottle of Crown Royal dumping it. Maybe I'll take the stop route. But what we're looking, and there's quite a few interested parties, I understand, that are going to go in there and hire back all the Diageo workers. And I know a lot of them already found jobs. And I know a lot of them went down to Stellantis to work in their plant because they're hiring. They're starting up that 3rd shift.
So to be clear, you are going to remove Crown Royal from the LCBO store shelf?
Oh, 100% I am.
When is it?
100%. No, I'm just going to focus on Crown Royal for now.
Oh, my God. Here we go again. Here we go again. When is this guy going to start treating adults like adults? When is Doug Ford going to let adults make adult decisions? When are we going to finally get rid of the kings in this country who think they can tell adults what they can and can't drink? Why is Doug Ford running the LCBO? Doesn't he have other things to do as the Premier of Ontario? There's got to be other things that he's got on his desk. Deciding what does and doesn't go in the LCBO can't possibly be high up on the chain. And, it was one thing when it was the American booze. The Americans never banned our booze. We did it to them. This isn't American, though. This is Canadian. The Diageo plant down in southwestern Ontario is closing. However, the product will continue to be made in Manitoba, and it will continue to be bottled in Quebec. But because they're closing down a plant in Ontario, Doug Ford's going to screw them. They won't even be allowed to sell their product in the LCBO. And again, my question is, how much more are adults going to take of this guy telling you what you can and can't drink? When are we going to let adults make adult decisions? I distinctly remember when Doug Ford got elected, he said, I'm not just going to be the premier for people who voted for me. I'm going to be the premier for everybody. Well, it's not unanimous, Doug. People don't agree here. There's a lot of people who think that this whole trade war with America is nonsense. Tell you what, if you let Ontarians make up their own mind and they've got a choice, they can buy wine from California or they can buy wine from Niagara. I have to think Doug Ford is just terrified that people are going to go back to choosing California and that Ontario wine is just not viable when it has competition. That's the message that I'm getting from that. We had to take away the competition, otherwise the Ontario stuff wouldn't survive. Well, then it's not worth saving. If people don't want it, why would we force it on them? Let adults be adults. Let people make up their own mind. Stay out of the liquor store, Doug Ford. You know what I want to hear about? I want to hear about healthcare. I want to hear about education. I want to hear when we're finally going to properly fund autism supports for families who need it in this province. I want to hear when we're going to deal with gridlock. I want to hear what we're doing to actually cut taxes. And I don't mean cut a few fees. I mean cut taxes for businesses and for people to make life more affordable. I want to hear all those things from my premier. I do not want to hear him now banning Canadian booze from the LCBO. There has never been a better argument for privatization. I feel like I'm beating my head against the wall here. Like, tell me I'm not the only person who feels this way. Surely more people have had enough of this. I know there's other issues that regular people have got to contend with on a day-to-day basis, but what's right is right and what's wrong is wrong. And Doug Ford trying to tell people what they can and can't drink, trying to force competition out of the market just so that he can wear as a badge of honor something that says Ontario wine is doing great. It's doing great with no competition. Let adults be adults. Stay out of the goddamn LCBO. Let us make our own choices in this province and stop screwing around, Doug Ford. You need to think about hospitals. You need to think about education. You need to think about provincial issues that actually affect people and stop this bullshit with Donald Trump.
On the
Yeah, sure.
back to office 5 days a week, just a couple questions on that.
Yeah.
One of the complaints from some of the unions is the lack of office space, despite you saying that there is enough. You know, the government is spending money on acquiring new leases to
Yep.
accommodate more workers. So how much money, taxpayer money, is the government prepared to spend
Well-
to get workers back in the office?
Well, the Ontario Public Service, the Secretary Cabinet and her deputies are all working on that. But I think we have room for the majority of the people. And they'll get through this. It was a little bump. They've been working on it for the last little while. But all we're asking is people come back into the office like every other person that's working out there, vast majority, because I tour more plants than anyone in the country, and they're all out there. They're back in the factories. Just imagine if you're a healthcare worker, you didn't get Christmas off with your family, or a police officer, a firefighter, a paramedic. Like, a lot of these people are working extremely hard, and all we're saying is just come back to the office like everyone else.
I'm just going to point out here to the premier that no, not everybody is back in the office 5 days a week. There's a lot of places that did not do that. There's a lot of places that have found hybrid arrangements that work. For him to say literally everybody else is back at the office except for these people is very, very dishonest, and it's misleading. I'd also like to point out, by the way, the premier used the example of first responders and nurses and healthcare professionals. They probably had to work over Christmas. Yeah, that's their chosen profession, and that's required of that profession. We also don't expect those first responders, by the way, to go into a classroom every day from 9 to 5 and educate kindergarten students, because we all have a different job that all has a different location and it all has a different set of expectations. We don't expect our first responders and our nurses to go in and do whatever needs to be done for the province. We don't expect our teachers to go and save a life or perform a lung transplant. Everybody's got a different job. Every job is different. The thought that everybody should be painted with one brush is ridiculous. However, again, I'll go back to what I said earlier. He's the boss when it comes to this. If he wants to order people back to work 5 days a week, that's on Doug Ford. Is it necessary? Probably not. I haven't heard a good excuse yet. other than, well, everybody else is doing it, and we got to try and get people going out for lunch downtown to save the downtown restaurants, which is a completely asinine argument. I'm going to move on here. You heard a lot more of Doug Ford's news conference than you saw in the news yesterday. So hopefully you're a little more up to speed on what the premier is doing. Right now, I'm going to ask a question about what another one of our politicians is doing. Why is Mark Carney in Paris? This is a meeting of the Coalition of the Willing. These are the people that are doing some sort of a weird cosplay right now where they think, or they're trying to put out the perception that they're solving the war between Russia and Ukraine. In reality, Mark Carney has zero impact on whether or not that war ends. This is purely being done as a trilateral agreement between the Americans, the Ukrainians, and the Russians. Mark Carney, Emmanuel Macron, Keir Starmer, all these very left-leaning countries, they're trying to create this coalition of the willing because I think they actually want war. I think they want this to continue, and I believe they want troops in Ukraine on the ground actively fighting the Russians. There's really no other way that you can see it. This coalition of the willing is not pushing for peace. They're getting ready for war. Here is Prime Minister Carney with just a few remarks. Then I'm going to get to him talking about Chrystia Freeland.
Prime Minister Michael Couture, CTV News. Thanks for taking our questions. In terms of security guarantees that Canada can offer, do we have the military bench strength to supply troops?
Yeah, I'll just give a high-level outline and answer your question. And I say high-level in part because what we're doing, and I want to salute Jenny Carrigan, the Chief of our Defence Force, our National Security Advisors, others who've been working intensively over the last few weeks, but over the course of the last months with their partners in developing the operational elements of this. So I'm going to speak in a high level. Recognizing there's a lot more underneath about what I'm about to say. The first line of defense, obviously, is the Ukrainian Armed Forces, and one of the elements of the 20-point plan, peace plan, is going to be the size of the Ukrainian Armed Forces, which is considerable as it's negotiated now, so the size would be very large. Secondly, there is monitoring and other support, logistics support that would be provided, training support to make sure that the Ukrainian Armed Forces over the medium term and longer term can defend themselves. Then the backstops become the coalition of the willing forces, so-called multilateral force, of which Canada would be a member under this framework, and very importantly, the United States is playing a backstop role. Do we have so to get to your specific question, do we have the bench strength, to use your term? Well, we've been building that bench, and we're going to continue to build that bench. The largest military buildup in generations, coming over the course of the next 5 years, an additional $80 billion of investment, in part because of issues like this, very importantly because of issues in our perimeter. I'll point specifically to the Canadian Arctic as an example there. So yes, we do. There would need to be a redeployment. But the last point I'll make, and
I don't need to hear it. Holy cow. Can you please just answer the question? You're going over there to try and commit Canadian troops to a conflict. You're going over there to say Canadians will fire weapons at Russians. That's what you're there to say. The question was simple. Do we have the military that can do that? He said we will, but we don't. They're working on a massive military buildup, but it's not ready yet. But we're still ready in case we have to go. What did he actually say? Did he actually answer the question? That's a strange one. Another one for Prime Minister Carney.
President Trump has said one of the key reasons that he went into Venezuela was to get the oil out. Do you think this will impact the Canadian oil sector, and does that increase the need, in your estimation, to have a pipeline to the northwest coast of BC?
Well, I'll say a couple of things. One is that, from our perspective, the removal of an illegitimate, corrupt, repressive government or leader, Mr. Maduro, is welcome news. It creates the possibility for democratic transition in Venezuela. We very much support that. We're available to support that, and we urge that to happen in a peaceful transition. And that's the best prospect for greater prosperity for the Venezuelan people, and to respect the will of the Venezuelan people. Now, a functioning, not corrupt, Venezuelan economy will produce more oil. It'll be better for the Venezuelan people. It'll be more stable for the Western Hemisphere. That's all a good thing. Canadian oil, Canadian energy, but I'll speak because you asked specifically about Canadian oil. It's been our view, and we're working towards this, that Canadian oil will be competitive because it is low risk, clearly low risk, low cost, the marginal costs. There's been huge progress in getting down the costs, and low carbon, which is what the Pathways project, carbon capture, will bring. And that makes Canadian oil competitive for the medium and long term. So we welcome the prospect of peace, a peaceful transition, democratic Venezuela. We welcome the prospect of greater prosperity in Venezuela, but we also see the competitiveness of Canadian oil, and we're investing, or we're putting in place measures so that that's going to happen.
Again, the fact that Venezuela is about to become a major player in the oil market. They've got incredible reserves that they're barely touching. They're about to go hard. Isn't that going to impact our ability to sell our oil? The answer is yes, obviously it will. Now, Mark Carney is saying that because we're going to do the low carbon oil, our oil will still be very, very competitive because people are going to choose the more expensive gas and oil than the cheap stuff from Venezuela. They have heavy crude. Canada has heavy crude. America needs heavy crude, and they were going to get it from us. Now they're going to get it from Venezuela. Which countries do you see intentionally paying more than they have to, intentionally having higher gas prices to buy Canadian low carbon oil as opposed to buying the cheaper stuff out of Venezuela? Which countries? I think countries are going to pick the cheapest option. We're doing low carbon oil. That means it's going to be much more expensive. There's a cost to making it low carbon. That carbon capture that Mark Carney talks about all the time. Brookfield's into that industry too. It's going to be much more expensive and harder to sell when you could, I don't know, you could pay $100 a barrel and get the Canadian low carbon oil. Or you can get the Venezuelan stuff for $40. Maybe cheaper. People are going to pick the cheaper option. I mean, it's just a no-brainer. Last one on this, the Prime Minister was asked about Chrystia Freeland. For those who did not hear the news yesterday, Chrystia Freeland has accepted another new job. She was Deputy Prime Minister. Then she stepped down. She was going to run for Prime Minister, and she ran against Mark Carney and lost the Liberal leadership. Mark Carney put her in cabinet. She didn't last very long. Then he appointed her to be a special envoy to Ukraine. Well, now the Ukrainians have hired her, and she's working for them, but she's still a sitting member of Canada's Parliament. I have heard from people on the left. I've heard from people in the center. I've heard from people on the right. Nobody thinks what Chrystia Freeland is doing is appropriate. I think she's been doing this job for a couple of weeks. It only just got announced. That's wildly wrong that someone with the kind of information access that Chrystia Freeland has, the ear that she has, and the people she's able to talk to, is working for the Canadian government and a foreign government at the same time. How can that be allowed? Here's the Prime Minister. He was asked about that this morning in Paris.
Did you ask her not to quit because of the minority parliament situation right now?
No, absolutely not. First off, let me.
I should say, as a member of parliament.
Let me. No. Just to be clear. Ms. Freeland, Chrystia has served our country for well over a decade in a formal role as a parliamentarian, certainly in a number of ministerial posts, and served with great distinction. She was. I had her as my special envoy after she left cabinet for the Ukraine reconstruction. Judgment became her judgment that she could be more useful for that process as she was leaving, as she was retiring as a parliamentarian, as a direct advisor. My judgment was that taking that role would be consistent with resigning as an MP, and I welcomed her doing that, and I'm pleased that for Ukraine, and again, if I can reemphasize and bring it back to today, there is real momentum. Nothing's assured, but there's real momentum in this peace process. And the security guarantees are incredibly important, but as is the reconstruction and the prosperity plan, and she'll be there to work on that. And look, we'll have a by-election. There'll be a few by-elections coming up, and we'll run great candidates, and the people in those ridings will decide who they want to send to Parliament.
Why is she still a member of Parliament? She said she will step down, but she hasn't yet. That's an incredible conflict of interest. Everyone agrees except for the actual Liberals. You think about this for just a second, because I got to flip it around. This is a prime example of how I can flip it around and make a better point. If a conservative under Stephen Harper's government had been found to have accepted a job working for a foreign government, but didn't want to give up their seat in Parliament right away, they wanted to keep that $200,000 a year plus salary rolling in, plus all the perks and benefits, there would be outrage. The left would be ready to burn down Parliament over that one. They would be screaming bloody murder. But they're not talking about this because it's their friend, Christia, and they're going to let her get away with it. She should step down immediately. Immediately. Step down. Quit your seat as a member of Parliament for your riding in Toronto, Christia. You cannot work equally for two different governments. You can't get paid from this government and then give confidential advice and do advocacy for a foreign government. It doesn't work that way. Pick a lane. Either quit Ukraine or quit Parliament. But you've got to do one, and you've got to do it now. You cannot do both. Friends, that's going to do it for me. Have yourselves a fantastic day. Tomorrow is going to be another great episode. I'm very much looking forward to that. I'll talk more about the Prime Minister over in Paris and whatever else comes out of today. If you haven't already, take a look for my YouTube channel. Not posting the whole podcast as a video, but people did ask me for video, and you can see some of it on my YouTube channel, also on my TikTok. You can look for me at Scott Fox On Air. Have a great day. I'm leaving you today with the sounds of Pat James and the whole truth. Hey now.